sitting in at 6'3", and 195 pounds. 23-year-old Donovan Mitchell, especially in the short NBA career that he's had up until this moment, has shown us that he is one of the league's premier elite basketball players, and he's definitely going to leave his mark on the NBA for years to come. So how you guys doing? It is Tuesday, June 9th in this quarantine. I'm James Sims. And I'm just gonna go into what makes Donovan Mitchell such an elite player in my eyes in this installment of in his personal elite profile, for how young he is, what he's been able to do for this team, especially as a young rookie, someone who really exceeded expectations. If you're unaware of who Donovan Mitchell is, he wears number 45 on the Utah Jazz. He's 6'3", which is really kind of short for a shooting guard, but he makes up for it with his high basketball IQ. He's very quick. He's a hard worker. Of course, he puts in the work every day. You can see he gets a lot better. He's an amazing shooter, especially in game. He has amazing athleticism as well. He's definitely a highlight factory. And for how young he is, and knowing if you know how good the Jazz are, you know that he's their primary scoring option. And he's still able to do so at such a young age. That's why I consider him to be one of my elites. But just before I get to that, I'm just going to get into a little bit of background on Donovan Mitchell. So, of course, he grew up in Connecticut, and class of 2015, he was a 4-star. I think he wasn't an All-American that year, I'm pretty sure, a McDonald's All-American. But he still took the offer to go play with Rick Pitino in Louisville for his last 2 years. His freshman year, of course, he was averaging 7 a game. And his sophomore, he was able to double it to where he was averaging 16 points per game, 5 rebounds, 3 assists, averaging 2 steals a game in the ACC, shooting 41% from the field, 35 from 3, and 81% from the free throw line. He would be named to the first team All ACC and the ACC All Defensive Team in his sophomore season. And apparently he was seen as a good enough prospect to be taken in the lottery of the 2017 draft, where he was drafted by the Denver Nuggets, 13th overall, and then he was eventually traded draft day to the Utah Jazz, and that was a decision that the Jazz are very, very proud of. They're glad that they made that decision at this day because of what he's been able to bring to that team. So since he's been drafted, of course, Donovan Mitchell has kind of risen into his own kind of stardom. If you're unaware of how his career started, he was a sophomore. In 2017-18, that was his rookie season. He started in 71 of the 79 games that he played. He would rise to the point where he was scoring 20.5 points, 4 rebounds, 4 assists, a steal and a half, while shooting pretty well from the field. But his rookie season, it aligned and matched up with Ben Simmons' rookie year because it was the year after Ben Simmons was drafted. But Ben Simmons was hurt. Ben Simmons was able to sit out for a year, and this was the first year that he played. Ben Simmons would go on an average 16 points, 8 rebounds, and 8 assists. So they gave the Rookie of the Year to Ben Simmons, even though Donovan Mitchell had a very sound argument as to whether he deserved to win it. But still, Donovan Mitchell is the 13th overall pick. Pick who was at the bottom of the lottery, was still unanimously named to the NBA or the first team All-Rookie. So that's what he was able to do in that season. They were able to get past the Oklahoma City Thunder in the first round, and Donovan Mitchell was one of the big reasons for the Jazz doing that, averaging 24 points per game in his first ever appearance to the playoffs. I think that's very, very impressive, and that's when I thought that, okay, this dude's actually kind of for real. In his second year, he was able to shoot better from the field in the regular season, averaging 24 points, 4 rebounds, 4 assists, a steal and a half still. He was becoming the same player, but he had a nice, smooth increase from his from his rookie season. And this current season, in the 63 games that he's playing, he's averaging 24.2 points per game, 4 rebounds, 4 assists, a steal a game, while shooting 45% from the field, 36% from 3, and 86% from the free throw line. In his age 23 season, which is how old he is now, He was first named an All-Star in the West, which is a very impressive accomplishment, especially for someone as young as he is. But at this point, he has established himself as a top 20 player in the league, one of the best players at his position, despite the fact that he's kind of undersized, just because of his ability to at least be the primary scoring option of this very, very deep Jazz team that has scoring options, but he assumed that responsibility himself, and he's really taken that role and never really kind of looked back, which is why I personally think that he is an elite young player. I think a lot of people have made comparisons to Dwayne Wade, another shooting guard who was 6'4", but kind of made up for it with his athleticism and his ability to get other players involved. I know Jazz fans are really happy and excited to have him there. And currently, the Jazz are sitting in the 4th seed where they're positioned to play the Oklahoma City Thunder. And I think, like I said, I think Donovan Mitchell's been playing a big part of that ever since he's been a rookie. I think since he's gotten in the league, he's shattered expectations that people had of him. He even stepped up in the playoffs and was able to do as much as he could for the Jazz in the playoffs, despite his lack of experience in the NBA compared to other top players who are leading their teams into the playoffs. I like to go on hypotheticals, even though I know it really does nothing. But I think that Donovan Mitchell is going to be a constant. He's going to be a constant obstacle for good teams to get through in the playoffs. I see his arc kind of being the same as Damian Lillard's, whereas I don't know if he can be the best player on a championship team, but he will be. He's going to knock some people out the playoffs. He's going to make some sparks. Especially, I think the best move for Donovan Mitchell would probably be to get out of Utah because, like I said, I don't think he'd be the best player on a championship team, but I think if he teams up with someone else, he could very easily be a safety net for a player like a Luka Doncic or a Trae Young or a Giannis to fall back on. I think he's an amazing young player. I think he's about a Jason Tatum level. I think they're both really, really amazing young players that are doing a lot for their team, and I respect what they're doing. And I currently like the way this Jazz team is built, of course, with Mike Conley, Joe Ingles, Royce O'Neal, and Rudy Gobert starting alongside him. It's a good support, and you have the supporting cast of Jordan Clarkson, Georges Niang, Tony Bradley, other players that really kind of fit in and really help make the Jazz a formidable team. I think my biggest concern is that I don't think he can stay in Utah because they're not going to be able to draft in the lottery very soon, and then there's not really other young players you can have him grow alongside. So, like I said, I don't think especially with player mobility, I don't see him staying in Utah for long if he's trying to win a championship. But I really appreciate how good he is as a young player, and he's another player that I like to stress that. Of course, it's always good to see young players, especially good young players, especially at this point, because he looks like a player that may eventually end up in the Hall of Fame. And he was just named an All-Star for the first time this year. I think he's going to have multiple All-Star seasons. So it's always good to follow players that are this good, this young, because you like seeing them get older and improving their game to the point where they become an almost unstoppable individual basketball player. And I was able to see that with Damian Lillard, and I think that Donovan Mitchell is going to follow the same mark. So I think Donovan Mitchell is going to be very, very fun to watch. If you get a chance to, especially if the Jazz are playing a really good team like the Lakers, the Clippers, or just watch them in the playoffs, because you have the time to basically see every NFL or NBA matchup in the playoffs. So if you really get a chance to check out Donovan Mitchell, he's number 45 on the Jazz. And there's not really much else I can say. I appreciate you for listening to all 9 minutes of this piece. I really do think Donovan Mitchell is an elite young player who can be one of the NBA's best players at one day. I don't think he can be the best player on a championship team, but I think he's a really, really good playoff contender. Thank you once again for listening to this, and I appreciate you for just taking time just to hear what I got to say about Donovan Mitchell. And with that, I'm going to say peace.